Thanks everyone for joining the Basin program today. We'll have a number of people clicking in. I think we have 40 organizations plus for our 8 speakers. Some folks will not join us till 1 o'clock, so you might see some activity on the board. I'm Colleen Hickey. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the Lake Champlain Basin program, and I'm fortunate to have met many of you in person. And for those I haven't seen before, welcome for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Ryan Mitchell, top of the screen. Ryan, can you give a wave? Ryan is going to be in control of this situation today from a technology perspective. And I don't know if Buzz is on yet, but we have several members of the Education and Outreach Committee for the Basin program joining us today. And the reason we called this workshop and committee meeting together was simply because the Basin program will be transitioning our educational and outreach funding into an RFP process, similar to what we've already done with the technical grants. And it's really going to be phased in over about an 18-month period. But we'll be getting ready to issue that first request for proposal soon. And the Education and Outreach Committee asked that we pull together the large grant recipients from the last 2 years so we can have a better understanding of how things are going. So 8 presenters will join us today. Some of them, Lori Fisher and Kristen and one other one, have received multiple grants under those categories. So we'll let them go beyond their 5 minutes. I'll be the timer. I'll try to keep you to 5 minutes, and then the committee members can ask a couple of questions and answers. We anticipate this part of the process will take about an hour. Then we'll have a half-hour open discussion about the new proposal. The schedule has been laid out, and Ryan will share his screen for us at that point, so you can see what the new schedule will be as well. And then we'll close it off at about 1:30, and the Education and Outreach Committee will meet beyond that. So is that as clear as mud for everyone? So, all right, so we'll get underway right away. Ryan, did I forget anything?
I don't think so. If you did, I did too.
Okay, so Ryan, you're in charge of muting us all, and maybe it might get a little tricky, but for every 5-minute presentation, let's go on mute anyway, if you can. So Natasha is going to talk about
Colleen, you're muted, so we can't hear you.
Sorry about that, Colleen. I muted you along with everybody else. You need to unmute yourself.
There we go. So Natasha will go first. Thank you, Bruce, for that heads up. Natasha is the director of the Vermont Composting Association. And could you tell us a little bit about your project, Natasha?
Sure, thank you so much. And I'll try to keep it pretty broad overview, just so I stay within my time period. And if anyone has questions, we can do that too. So I'm the director of the Composting Association of Vermont. I use she, her pronouns. And I've been with the Composting Association of Vermont for just over 3 years. I first met Colleen we're part of the Lawn to Lake Coalition as well. And so that's sort of my tie into a lot of this work. For our project, we are developing a curriculum for what we're calling a soil builders workshop. So we're going to be developing curriculum that provides compost related eco-literacy for Lake Champlain Basin decision makers, professionals, and advocates. The curriculum specifically addressing what we've identified as a knowledge gap about specific benefits from using compost and how to modify current farming, site engineering, as well as landscape practices to produce those benefits. So we're really helping connect the dots between compost and soil health and water quality by helping people understand that there are different types of compost and then as well where and when to use what. So there's a lot of confusion around those, and people have certain ideas of like compost as this one thing, but really there's a lot of different ways that it can be used. And so well, we originally envisioned holding a series of these workshops in person in Vermont, New York, and Quebec. We were going to hold 7 workshops around the Lake Champlain Basin area, working with partners in New York and Quebec. We've, of course, been pivoting along with the rest of the world to the pandemic situation. And so we are creating, we're taking a much more modular approach to the curriculum. So building out different pieces that we can then sort of mix and match and put together depending on the audience. And we hope to be, we're actually doing a dry run of one of the main best management practices modules in December, and then we'll be doing a launch in the, in January, February timeframe. And we are hoping and sort of holding out the possibility of doing some small group in person, sort of more hands-on stuff in the spring, if that is a possibility. But of course, we're prepared if it isn't. In terms of the impact of COVID, we're very definitely delayed in our project. We thought that we would already have been holding some of the workshops this October. That obviously has not happened. And what we found is, we assembled a team of experts in different areas to help put this curriculum together, and they've all been impacted in different ways. The compost producers and folks in that world have been like suddenly out flat by just keeping up with demand for compost products. They are out, they are scrambling. There's primarily driven by the increased pandemic-related increased interest in home gardening. They are having a year like they have never had before. And so that's also impacted their availability. But overall, I found that just about everybody on our team has been touched and impacted just in terms of everything that's been going on in our worlds and just their capacity and bandwidth to move things forward. Things are just happening a little bit more slowly than maybe we had expected. However, I will say that I think in some ways moving to a more virtual format opens up possibilities and different partnerships and increased participation, or a broader participation through the Lake Champlain Basin. And so I've really sort of been focusing on that, and we've been stretching our creativity muscles in terms of coming up with interactive virtual ways of engaging our stakeholder groups. I'm probably over already, aren't I, Colleen?
No, you have 1 minute left. Go for it. You'll hear the timer at 30 seconds.
Excellent. So I'll just say, Colleen had asked if, how the grant has been helpful in meeting or in reaching out to our target audience. And I would say it's been very helpful, not just the funding, of course, but in terms of stakeholder engagement and network building. And really just the fact that we are a recipient of one of the Lake Champlain Basin Program grants carries a lot of weight and opens doors, and people are like, oh, let's, this isn't just people trying to put, high nutrient compost into our waterways. And so that's a stigma that we've been working hard to counteract, and being a grant recipient has certainly been helpful with that. And I guess I'd just like to end, there were some other things, but I guess I'll just end by saying that we really appreciate the flexibility with the timing. And one thing that has just been a challenge in terms of feedback for the program is because everything has been delayed and we don't, receive grant payment until a specific activity is completed. That just means that we're having to sort of hold that because we're still having to pay our experts who are contributing, but things are just drawn out. And so we're working hard to get more on track in terms of timing, but that has been a challenge. And part of that challenge comes specifically from just the COVID related delays.
Great, thanks very much, Natasha.
Yeah.
So for committee members, we have Betsy Lowe. Betsy, can you raise your hand down there and wave? And Bruce Lawson and Hap, are you still on? And I think Buzz is on. And Frederick, you're with OBVBM. Okay, up in Missisquoi. Amy Overstreet is with NRCS over in Winooski as well. And I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone because I can't see you. Chris Stepanek will be joining us soon. So committee members, do you have any questions for Natasha on her grant?
Yeah, I had one.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that it's difficult engaging with your stakeholders. Can you just give me a brief overview? How are you doing that? What's the nature of your activities?
So, so stakeholder engagement has been good, although a little bit delayed. I don't know if you mean the project expert folks who are actually contributing to the curriculum, but I'll just answer both quickly. So some of the challenges have just been really availability and capacity of our team that we put together to work on the curriculum. But in terms of stakeholder engagement, a lot of it was just delayed initially as we tried to everyone tried to sort out what they were doing, and a lot of people, their work schedule and work from home and everything was very disruptive, and so that things have just slowed down there. But our primary outreach has been through phone conversation, Zoom, and email, just reaching out to the different groups that we had already identified. And then it's actually been ramping up in terms of planning some, like with the Composting Council of Canada has been very instrumental in identifying some partners in Quebec. And so we're going to be doing sort of these mini stakeholder groups on Zoom, interactive groups to get input and to understand more clearly what their perceived needs and obstacles are, obstacles and opportunities from their point of view. So we're sure that we're folding that into the curriculum as we build it out.
Great, thank you. One more quick question, Natasha. Somebody asked if the lessons are already learned or yet to be analyzed between the relationship of compost and soil and water quality.
Yeah, so we are leaning on already established specifications and practices from around the country and quite honestly, internationally as well. We are not looking in this project to be doing that science itself, but we're pulling from other established practices.
Okay, thanks very much for your summary.
Yeah.
Okay, next up is Elizabeth Lee from the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum.
Thank you. And Ryan, do you want to share your screen for just people can check it out while I'm talking? Is that probably the easiest way to do it? So I work at the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum. We're located in Vergennes, Vermont, but we do serve the whole watershed. And our project was to take the giant map that you see on your screen and travel to New York and Vermont and to Quebec to share this map with students and teachers all over the watershed. And we initially planned on doing teacher training to help teachers learn to use the map themselves, but we also developed 5 basic things that we wanted the students to learn. So we did create the lesson plans for those basic lessons. The idea of the lessons was to emphasize the connectivity in our watershed from the widest reaches, and to have all the students and teachers who use the map to understand their relationship to the lake in kind of a new way. We partially wanted to use the state of the lake data, but also have teachers use their own local issues to show the connectivity to the lake. And it is designed for all ages. So we came into the project with the funding for the map, and it's based on a National Geographic giant map program, which you can find more about. Map's 35 feet by 27 feet. So it does require a large space, and that is one of the impacts that has been significant because of COVID. So we were able to hold a modified training in August, and we have developed our 5 basic lesson plans, but the teachers who we anticipated being the primary users they're just overwhelmed, as everyone has experienced. And so they have their hands full, and many have expressed interest in it as an amazing resource, not just for elementary students, but also for middle and high school students. But because the map requires a huge space, that's been a challenge because we are not able to get into either the gyms or cafeterias where we planned for teachers to use it. And also most schools are not allowing outside educators into their classrooms. It is not a project that is easily able to be translated into a virtual experience. The whole point of it is really to engage learners in a physical way and really click into their spatial thinking capacity and have them move. So at this point, we are kind of paused. We have one teacher who is interested in using the map on her own with our coaching from afar. And Harry Chaucer, who's been an incredible colleague, who's the person, the educator that you see on the map in the image, has volunteered to offer 30-minute or thought it offer Zoom consultation with teachers who want to try and use it on their own without our guidance. We're hoping that some teachers will be able to do that with our help. Without the EandO grant, we could not have done this project. The small ed grants were just not significant enough in size. We knew we would need a lot of staff time, and especially to take the maps to schools and also to provide stipends for teachers to develop their own lesson plans and practice them and try them out and share them with other educators. We really needed the size and scope of the EandO grant, the large ed grants. So really appreciate that, that development. Our end goal was really to inspire the students to feel connected to Lake Champlain and to see the lake in a new way as their lake and to build their stewardship sensibility, but also really to take all the amazing data that's out there from the state of the lake and from many other excellent lesson plans and excellent education programs available and build spatial thinking into it. At the Maritime Museum, we are map lovers, and this is just a great big version of that. So on a practical level, we were hoping for a lot more new lesson plans, and having lots of school programs have been done. Those have been pushed into 2021. Our plan for sharing it, the results with other people, is a lot of social media. And when it's COVID safe, we'll be traveling to schools and helping them to expand the teachers to expand their capacity to use the map, either individually or in their teaching teams. We're totally open to other organizations other than schools to also use this incredible resource. We'd love to share it with you, especially if you have a big space. We were very successful in August using the Button Bay State Park Pavilion. Outdoor spaces work great for this, and we are very experienced outdoor teachers. So happy to work with you if you have a great big outdoor space. I know there's another one in at Oakledge Park in Burlington, and there's a couple things that we need to share about caring for the map, but we are very open to getting it in circulation. Fits into, I see the question, it is very portable. It fits into a rolling tote. And we also are developing sort of props. So whether that's some flexible chain and some little icons, little lighthouses, little hockey pucks that can be stacked up to represent data, whatever props that we need, or having students also make props like fish or other representations that they for whatever content they are working on. Yep, am I done?
Yep, you're done, Elizabeth. Let's see if anyone, thank you for that. It's a quick, abrupt answer. So were you able to hear that sound that I put in? It's a harp sound. Did that come across at about 30 seconds?
I heard something and I thought that might be you, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
The only other thing I would just add is, Ryan, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down and let people know about the video. But
so as Ryan scrolls down for Elizabeth, I would also just like to note, Elizabeth mentioned stipends for the teachers. And I should point out that the Basin program doesn't normally allow stipends anymore. In this particular instance, we allowed it because it wasn't about just participating in a meeting. It was about those teachers creating the curriculum and then agreeing to sharing it either online or with their cohorts. So it was a little bit different, but normally under EPA guidance, we're not allowed to do that. Elizabeth, do you want to mention this video?
Sure. One other quick thing about the stipends too was that it was to create a bank of lesson plans for other teachers to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the video that Ryan, there's a link on our website to this video, and it's a 3 minute, I forget how long it is. It's a video that will give you a lot more information about why we did the giant map and how you might be able to use it.
Okay. EandO committee, any last question, and then we'll go along? No?
Happy
Okay.
to email if you have any other questions.
Okay, super. Thank you, Elizabeth. So let's see, Hilary Solomon, how do you feel about coming up next?
I feel great. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, so, and can you introduce yourself to Hilary?
Sure. So my name is Hilary Solomon with the Poultney Meadowy Natural Resources Conservation District. We're in Poultney, Vermont, which is in the South Lake Watershed. And I'm just going to speak very briefly. And then the Champlain Valley Native Plant Restoration Nursery Manager, Sadie Brown, is going to talk a little more specifically about the grant. We work in 5 program areas, very heavily in agricultural water quality, and then forest lands management, stormwater, watershed assessments, project identification, and education and outreach. I would say primarily that we are an implementation group, but we really enjoy doing education and outreach work. And these, the EandO grants have been really, really helpful for us. I think we'd love to see at some point, and we've sort of dabbled with it, having an education center, like a South Lake Champlain Education Center in Poultney somewhere. We used to be housed on Green Mountain College's campus. And so we've had sort of ties with educational groups. And we have also been working in collaboration with other partners on the Champlain Valley Native Plant Restoration Nursery, which we're now seeing as possibly a place where we could hold education and outreach events. And so that was, this grant allowed us to really transition some of our education programming to the nursery and to try and build some programming to use into the future. I think the main sort of overarching aspect of the grant was that we were looking at how vegetation is really a primary component of most water quality projects, from cover crops and buffers on farms to stormwater projects that have plantings and infiltration areas that can use native plants, to of course all the forestry buffers and that are so important. So I'm gonna turn this over to Sadie now to speak more, more in detail about the specifics of this grant.
Great, thank you.
Ryan, if you could share those slides. Yeah, so another goal for this project was really try to maximize and reach different groups of people in the community than we usually would come across with when we're doing our implementation work. So next slide. So one of our tasks was information sharing, and we were actually able to create a social media page for the nursery. And we used it throughout the project to share different information that we had developed, as well as advertise our events. And then we were also able to use it to connect with other groups in the area, which really allowed us to expand our audience base. And then we were fortunate enough to have this grant last year, so we were able to have in-person events. So we attended 6 different community events and had booths and spoke to individuals in the community. Next slide. So one of our other tasks was to develop materials and hold workshops. So these are some of the species-specific relationships that we decided were important to highlight and be interesting for people following our social media pages. And then next slide. We held 2 workshops, and the one pictured is about creating pollinator spaces. And that was more of a general audience, and it was attended by 17 different people. And for the presentation portion, we partnered with a local farmer, and then those who attended got to build and take home pollinator hotels. And then for the second workshop, it was more targeted audience. It was for the Tri-County Women's Farm and Garden Association, and that had 35 people attend, and that was more using plants in restoration practices. Next slide. So our third task was to increase our student-based education. So we had 2 second grade classes, which are pictured here. And they came to the nursery and learned about seed dispersal and the role plants play in our lives. So they did float tests and planted some acorns. Next slide. We also had interns attend the nursery. So we had 6 high school interns and then 1 college student. So they helped at the nursery and then also helped at the different outreach events that we had. And then the next slide. So we also had volunteer days, which we invited local partners. We had a daycare there. We had a local Girl Scout troop. And then we also had an open house to kind of summarize what we did over the season. And celebrate our accomplishments. And I think having the large education outreach funding category, it really allowed us to expand our audience and have a stronger, more rounded program, which will help us in the future to set up more of an educational center at the nursery.
Great. Thank you. Great slides on this one. So it showed a lot of the diversity of the audiences with whom Pollinator Meadowy works. And I know that many of your individual grants do that as well. So thank you for that, Hilary and Sadie. Education Outreach Committee members, would you have any questions? No? Okay, so let's see. We do have, let me see, Amy Overstreet's was about the transport of the map. Any other questions from anyone? No? All right. Well, thank you very much. And the district often has a lot of colorful slides that involve kids and the public. And Basin program loves it when you are able to provide up to 5 high quality photos that we use either on Facebook or on the website or in documents that we produce. So thank you for doing that. And we encourage others to do the same too. Okay, great. Thanks, Hilary and Sadie. So next up, Kristen, are you okay to go? Okay, great. So Kristen Wild is with the Lake George Association. We've had the pleasure of working with Kristen for a long time too. So it's all yours, Kristen.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just going to touch on 2 of our large EandO grants that we've got these past 2 years. The first one I'll touch on is our 2019 grant, which was for our outdoor classroom and stream monitoring programs. So our stream monitoring programs is something we've been doing for several years. So by no means was it something that we began last year. But as you can imagine, 30 kids out in the woods at a stream gets a little hectic. So we created an outdoor classroom area with benches and seating and kind of little tables so that when we are conducting the hands-on aspect of the program, yeah, they're in the stream with their boots and catching macroinvertebrates. We then have a better spot to gather together to kind of give instructions and wrap up as well. So our grant was definitely, made that possible. The outdoor classroom is located on property owned by the Village of Lake George. So we don't have our own kind of stream frontage, but we're very happy to let us put this out on their trails up at the Lake George Recreation Center. So that happened in 2019. 2019 was definitely a better year for hands-on education. So I was able to, complete that grant, do all of our education programs that we expected. So we had just over 1,500 students come to that outdoor classroom and out in the stream with us with that grant.
A lot.
It is a lot. I miss them all dearly this year, though. It's been very sad not to see that number of students through my programs this year. So that definitely leads me to our current large grant, which is for our floating classroom program. I know a lot of the committee has joined us out on that boat as well, and you're pretty familiar with it. So the current grant is for our floating classroom program. When we applied for the grant, we had planned on 85 programs this year. Luckily, when I created that work plan, I knew that my spring season wasn't going to happen. So we kind of tweaked that work plan to go into next spring as well. So with schools not being able to go on field trips to come see me, it's been quite a challenge. But our grant also includes summer public programming. So we were able to follow our state guidelines, and those include being limited to 50% capacity on our floating classroom vessel, and making sure that all the kind of separate families that are coming out with us in the summer programs, they're seated 6 feet apart. So I did run 9 programs, not close to 88, 85 programs that I anticipated, but we did, kind of do a trial run on some of these programs this summer, following, disinfectant protocol and everything as well. So the struggle, still running programs is, in the past we would do 2 programs a day, back-to-back programs. I'm now limited to a single program each day because I can't disinfect our equipment and confidently let other people handle it in the same day and things like that. As far as student education, I have been able to tap into some of our homeschool groups and these kind of homeschool learning pods that are popping up. So families that have decided, to kind of, felt safe being together, and they're doing their homeschooling, curriculum through the school, but at their homes and not sending their kids into the schools. So I've been able to tap into some of those, and do have homeschool groups and a few of these kind of pods ready, interested in the program come this spring, so that I will still be able to complete some programming, and just hope that schools might be able to come on field trips.
Okay. And thank you for that summary. And as you know, when the Basin program works with New England Interstate on contracts, we do have some flexibility in terms of extending grants. So especially for those who have been impacted by COVID a lot, please be in touch with us if we can assist with that. So thank you, Kristen. It's been a nice mix with that addition of the outdoor classroom for Lake George. I think is very helpful. Any committee members have a quick question for Kristen on this project? If so, you can maybe raise your hand, because Ryan has us all muted. Most of us muted. So there you go. Buzz? Ryan?
Yeah, it says he's unmuted. I'm not sure why we don't
Let's try
hear him.
that again, Buzz. Can we hear you now? Buzz?
Nope.
No? Okay. Anyone else? Thumbs up. Got 2 thumbs up. Okay,
I have a
great.
quick question.
Okay.
Kristen, do you ever do any like tour or sort of demonstrations for partners? We've heard such great things about the floating classroom, and I'm just wondering if you'd ever do that type of demonstration for folks like us.
Definitely. Yeah. Any kind of groups that want to come out with us and see the program and talk about the program. Yeah, we've done it in several times. So yeah, just let me know.
Okay. Let's try Buzz again. Nope. No, can't hear you.
No, it says he's unmuted. Maybe type it into the chat, Buzz.
There we go. Well,
Does Buzz have to unmute as well?
yeah. Okay. Well, that'll drive him nuts. Buzz is the chairperson of the EandO committee, so this will really drive him nuts. Okay. We also had 2 other members join us. John, can you wave your hand? John is the president of Missisquoi River Basin Association, former teacher. Karen, can you wave your hand if you're still there? There we go. Karen Bates is with Vermont DEC as well. another committee member. So thank you for joining us. Okay, let's see. Let's Martha, substance. So Martha is wondering, Kristen, before we move on, the substance of the curriculum and lessons learned.
Yeah, I guess I didn't touch on that. Yeah, so just basic water quality education. So our floating classroom, we do water clarity measurements, catch zooplankton, look at dissolved oxygen, pH, things like that. So it's just a curriculum based on water quality monitoring and what those impacts, kind of talk about the watershed as a whole and what the watershed, how that impacts the lake.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, next up, Nate, are you ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. Go for it, Nate.
All right, thanks, Colleen.
And can you
hi,
do an
everyone.
intro too?
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
you.
Hi, everyone. Nate Trachty, he, him pronouns. I work as an education specialist for Lake Champlain Sea Grant, focusing on our Watershed Alliance programming. So Watershed Alliance is a K-12 education and outreach program that's been operating for about 20 years now in the Basin. Prior to my arrival, the vast majority of our education programming was focused in Vermont, where we reached about 10,000 students over the course of that nearly 20 years. And the main objective of Watershed Alliance is to increase youth awareness and knowledge of watershed issues in the Lake Champlain Basin. So the initial large EandO grant that we received established the position that I hold now, based out of SUNY Plattsburgh and the Lake Champlain Research Institute, to expand our Watershed Alliance programming to the New York side of the basin. So a little bit about our programming. Basically, we provide curriculum, equipment, and instructors to K-12 teachers. We'll visit schools, take students into the stream to do stream monitoring and stewardship programming, look at benthic macroinvertebrates, discuss best management practices, and really talk about water quality issues that face us here in the basin. In the initial year or so of programming, we were able to reach like around 425 students in the New York side alone, scattered across a number of different schools and dispersed kind of up and down the western portion of the basin. Had a lot of fun, built a really great fledgling network of interested teachers and partners, and we're able to kind of establish ourselves as a resource for watershed education in the area, which was really the main overarching goal, was to be here and be present and have a network of teachers who are excited about kind of providing their students opportunities to learn about the basin. And we were on track for another full slate of programming in spring 2020, prior to COVID, which obviously eliminated all of our in-person programming plans, which was very unfortunate. But because we were kind of here and established and had a bit of a network, we were able to kind of pivot quickly and establish some virtual and remote offerings to continue educating students and providing teachers with the resources they needed to do watershed education, whether it's remotely or in person with their own students. So just a quick example, we spent a lot of time developing what we're calling the Watershed Explorer booklet. So it's really a self-contained work booklet that teachers can either work through in person with their students or send home as sort of a homework assignment. And this gets students thinking sort of introspectively, working in the booklet to learn about the watershed, or encourages them to go out into the field and do what they can on their own, find a stream. With the Watershed Explorer booklet, we've distributed roughly about 250 or so copies to schools in the New York side of the basin, and another 200 plus to libraries, distribution points, and partner organizations. And we'll be getting sort of more formal feedback on how that's working for teachers in the coming months. But so far, we've heard really excellent things from partners and teachers who are finding it useful and excited about the resource. So yeah, like I think I mentioned already, really without the large EandO grant, we still would probably be doing very minimal programming, if any, in New York. So it really helped establish the position that I occupy now and reach a number of students and teachers in the New York side of the basin. So I don't want to get too down into the weeds. I'm happy to answer any questions folks have.
That's fine. Nate, could you just mention the, I can't remember the title of it, and I know Ashley's right here too, but you pulled together 4 or 5 schools last spring, right? For an open house. You know, I know Ashley's shaking her head. There we go. Do you know what I'm referencing, Nate?
Yeah, I believe you're referencing what we call the Watershed Science Fair.
That's it.
Yeah, so normally in the winter we're pretty dormant, being a field-based education initiative. But we worked with a partner organization called College for Every Student down in Essex, New York, and we pulled a number of their partner schools into a Watershed Science Fair where they all joined on their campus down in Essex in middle of February, and kind of rotated through different stations to learn about the watershed and do some STEM programming with a number of their peers from across the basin. So we had students from different schools all in a room at one time, kind of learning about the basin and learning about water quality. And we were really excited to build on that program in the coming years. Of course, now we're having to kind of put that on hold for the moment. We're not going to be getting 50 to 80 students in a room from different schools anytime soon, but definitely looking to build on that in the future and do that again. That was a big hit with students and teachers and that partner organization. So
okay,
thanks for that prompt, Colleen.
Yeah, and just because she's side by side in the box, Ashley, is there anything you wanted to add? Ashley's also from Sea Grant, works very closely with Nate.
Yeah, I mean, Nate did a great job describing our program. I think the only other, thing that I would add is we have been, for the duration of this program, which is now almost 20 years, tried to have kind of a stronghold in New York, which has been incredibly challenging. And it's been even more challenging without someone there to kind of win buy-in from the community and build those partnerships that are essential to kind of longevity of a program. And so we've really been able to do that over the last couple of years with Nate's position. And then additionally, another kind of pivot point for us in our K-12 education during COVID-19 has been Zuma Scientist, which has been a really successful program that has enabled us to really kind of break down some of the geographic barriers in what we are able to access and the areas of the basin that we are able to reach. So I'll just add that, but thanks so much, Nate.
Yeah, and some of those scientists have been New York scientists. Most recently, you had Kurt on there, right, talking about climate change as well. So thank you for that. Ashley and I are 2 of the partners in the Champlain Basin Education Initiative, and Lori is too, and Elizabeth Lee's on, and it's hard because I can't see all of you. But one of the target things that we have on our schedule for 2020 is to pull many of the New York partners who are already teaching classrooms together for a half-day sort of summit. It'll have to be virtual, but certainly the Wild Center and LGA and Sea Grant and the Maritime Museum and Minor Institute and several others already offer programs, and we thought it might be a nice idea to share that programming opportunity, and then for New York, perhaps the following year, host a summit for teachers. We've done this before for Champlain, and we've pulled in about 80 teachers down at Basin Harbor a few times, New York, Vermont, and Quebec teachers, and we'd like to try to make it geographic focused in New York. So we'll be reaching out to many of you over the next couple of months on that. Look at that, that timer stopped me. Okay, great. All right, any quick question from Education Outreach Committee members? Let's see.
I don't want a question. I just want to say it's from starting getting kids in streams 30 plus years ago. it's great to see so many other programs going.
Okay, super. And Buzz has a couple of chat points going on too. So we can keep an eye on that chat box as well. Very good. Thank you, John, for that comment as well. And thanks, Nate and Ashley. Lori Fisher, are you ready to go? All the way from Denver. Okay, here we go.
Hi,
And
everyone.
could you introduce yourself to Lori, please?
Absolutely. I'm Lori Fisher. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm executive director of the Lake Champlain Committee. We are based in Burlington, but we are a bi-state watershed-based organization that has been working for over 55 years on water protection and education, and work a lot, certainly very closely with the Basin program, as well as the partners and people who have already spoken today. So the two grants I'll cover are, one is our Ahead of the Storm program, which built off several other initiatives, which I just want to raise, and thank you, Ryan. This was a program that we got a small grant from the Basin program initially to do stormwater assessments at 4 schools. We did 2 in New York, 2 in Vermont, and then the large grants allowed us to outline an implementation project. And like Nate said, they really allowed us to establish more of a presence in New York, which we have been really wanting to do. And so our priority was to build off the stormwater assessment project work that we had been doing, where we had gone into these schools, and Plattsburgh High School was one of them. We worked with the schools and the students to identify stormwater projects and issues there. So it was doing some stormwater education work. And if you can just scroll down to the next slide. So it was very hands-on, doing some curriculum work in the schools. And then we came up with a report for each school as to next steps for implementation. And the large grant allowed us to apply for funds to do some of that implementation work. And we wanted to work with a New York school. That was our priority, because we really felt like we wanted to work with some more underserved populations and build that. So we were there were outgrowths of that initial infusion from the Basin program that led to, from our stormwater assessment work, it also led to, we were partnering with Sea Grant at that time, and they then took that to the next level in really enhancing stormwater education curriculum. And we got this funding to do on-site implementation and stormwater reduction. We were originally going to be working with Plattsburgh, and we reached out to Nate. So Nate was involved in that. Clinton County Natural Resources Conservation Service was on board. And then the program had to be delayed. The school wanted us to really delay the project for several years, because they had just gotten grant funding that was going to influence a lot of the grounds. And so they were worried about doing any of the stormwater implementation work prior to that. And in the end felt that they really couldn't segregate it. So then we were looking for another New York school when COVID hit. So we are currently on pause because schools aren't really allowing outside educators in, as Elizabeth noted. And there's also an issue, they're under a lot of stress right now, and it's really hard to advance plan, because how this, the virus is moving forward is really, unknown. So are they going to be open? Are they moving to remote learning? It's hard to invite another partner in. But the Basin program has been, incredible in terms of the flexibility and helping us work through this. And we're really excited to be able to do more of a hands-on project when we can nail down the next school. We can do some work remotely, but a lot of this work, and certainly the on-site demonstration, and if you can go to the next slide, Ryan, the on-site demonstration works, all of these identifying areas where stormwater is a problem, there are real opportunities to work in that spatial environment that Elizabeth was noting, to take the students in to see that And our program was also really going to engage the students in helping us identify problems, involve the community, everything from buildings and grounds to the larger, broader community with investments of volunteer resources to help not only implement the project, but maintain it. And we feel if we do that in this COVID environment, certainly we could hire out, but we would miss that educational opportunity. So we are on pause of that aspect of the program, but looking to see if we can nail down a school that feels like they can commit enough to so that we can do some of the virtual training and virtual classroom work. That's part of this project. And I'll just have to say that, you know, the funding for this, the large grant was absolutely instrumental. The big portion of this grant is really paying for on-site, you know, retrofits and stormwater remediation work. And you know, that just the ceiling of $10,000 in the small grants wouldn't have allowed for this. It also really helped us build on this continuum of work from our stormwater assessment programs, which we did. We got a grant for stormwater assessments in schools, and Lewis Creek Association did as well. And we tried to pair our work with theirs. We had different approaches, but we decided let's both use ahead of the storm, which hats off to Lewis Creek. That was their nomenclature that they came up with. And we thought, we don't want confusion going forward. We felt like ahead of the storm was an illustrative title. And they were very generous with saying, yeah, let's share that title. Let's share our best practices and approaches and move forward on this collectively. And then the stormwater education curriculum that then Sea Grant took from our initial partnership out. And Sea Grant is also very dedicated to working with us with our identified schools. So, you know, it's really helped enhance partnerships, build out networks, and capitalize on projects that we have done over time. And so we are excited to get back to it in a non-COVID environment. And then I'll jump quickly to the next large grant project that we got. I'm not sure if anybody knows what this photograph is, but maybe, and I can't see everybody on screen, but if you can just, I don't know, Ryan, if you can unmute people, if anybody has a response to what they're seeing here. And if not, I'll just move forward in the interest of time. But this is Vallis nerea americana. It's American eelgrass. And the genesis of our next project, which is called From Arrowhead to Yellow Pond Lily, an outreach campaign for Lake Champlain's native aquatic plants, was the fact that, you know, in our field work for, you know, more than 50 years, we often encounter people responding to any vegetation in the water as a weed. It is too often what people call vegetation. They don't like anything around their feet when they're swimming. And there's a lot of misinformation and lack of awareness of the role that native aquatic plants play in the health of the lake. And so we wanted to do a project that would help dispel that misinformation and also give people some tools in the field to better identify plants so that they would see them not as weeds, but as this natural part, an important part of the ecosystem. And so what the large grant funding allowed us to do was to develop a series of illustrations that we're going to ultimately put on in laminated field cards or something that will be field worthy, so people can go out along the shoreline and help identify plants. We'll also do both in place if we're in a non-pandemic environment, but also virtual field tours to help people understand where these plants, what part of the shoreline and the water's edge and the water they inhabit, what their value is. And we'll be doing a lot of education information around along those lines, sharing it with watershed organizations ultimately. And also we will be doing an art show. So we have a gallery secured through South End Art Hop, which is a big annual festival in the Burlington area. And we have a gallery that will showcase the information for a couple of months. And it, using art and photographs and illustration as an access point, it gets to different audiences. It helps stimulate conversations. And so we're excited to be doing this. And it's also highly mobile. And it's something that builds on work that we've done in the past, where we are the author of Lake Champlain's only natural history book, having this guide to the native plants. We think will really be something that will expand on our other educational efforts. And we have a very talented artist on board. Our Director of Science and Water Programs, Lauren Sofer, is a really excellent illustrator. So we'll be bringing that strength to the table, and it'll be highly transferable. The whole idea is to share this information out, and it's something that we can build on year after year. And so one of the things I'd note is that I feel like the Basin program has been really, really helpful in helping, plant seeds and then allow them and keep watering these things along the way to keep growing programs and projects. And that recognition of making these investments over time and allowing us to keep going back and growing and expanding programs has been absolutely essential and really, really valuable. And, it's the only reason we can do, both of these projects was the level of that grant funding. When you're doing illustrations, photographic work, et cetera, it's labor intensive, time intensive. And as I noted before, that stormwater implementation, that on the ground work, it's a big expense. So having that flexibility too was really, really helpful.
Thank you very much, Laurie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Education Outreach Committee members, Bruce, do you have your hand up? Whoops.
Yep. No, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Fascinating, because we spend so much time thinking about the non-natives. Is this one of the only programs that's out explaining native plants?
I would say Hilary's project does a really good job at that. And it, just in hearing Hilary and Sadie give some overview of that, that's also something where we can cross promote. So I'm already seeing that, for people in certain areas, we're going to promote their endeavor. And in fact, that's another thing that we did as well with the school program. We were looking for sources for native plants for the plantings, and really wanting to buy local and also promote that, and then say to the schools, this is where you can go to expand. So I would say that, I don't know, Hilary and Sadie jump in here, but I would say they do a great job. Intervale does too. It's more land-based. I think this may be the first Basin effort, from what I've heard, really focused on native aquatic plants.
Hey, Lori, on the those cards, what I've been thinking about is maybe on the back side, some kind of connection, an environmental connection, whereby the example I'm thinking of is the water shield pond lilies are platforms for dragonflies to lay their eggs, but that then connects to dragonflies as adults and mosquito controls. So if that can be linked, that might.
We initially, were a little like, we realized we're probably only going to have enough funds for 15 plants initially. And what we're also working with state agency folks as well, who have some other guides going, and theirs are much more technical, and they're dichotomous keys, which are, have a real value, but they're not as accessible to community members or schools in some ways. But we really want the backside of the card or certain parts of these cards to tell those informative stories. And another thing we're going to do is because we'll be limited with it's expensive for any time you're going to laminate anything or you're going to have something field worthy, your costs like, quadruple or sextuple. At any rate, we're going to do fact sheets, which will have a lot more information about the plants so that we can get to those kinds of stories too. But we also want to invite all of you in. So John, feel free to share with me any ideas of some key plants you'd like to see us include, or, that information.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're okay. So thanks very much. We have two more presenters. I think they're, let me see, we'll go for Dean first because I know he has a meeting coming up. So Dean Moore is representing Quickney and the Warren County Soil and Water District today, otherwise known as Dino.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you, everybody. Yeah, think of me sort of more like a third string quarterback. I am with the district, the Soil and Water Conservation District in New York. I do have a history of working at EandO, which we'll talk about momentarily. And we are partnered up with Quickney, as many of you know quite well already. So yes, not a crazy authentic title for our grant, as we called it, the augmented reality sandbox model, as some of you have as a resource already. But for us, this is going to hopefully turn out as a tremendous tool to be used at the education center where it's placed at EandO Farm in Bolton Landing, New York. The district, excuse me, when I say the district, having worked for a couple of different organizations, I'll be mixing things up here a little, but nonetheless, primarily the funding supplied the purchase of this model, which is very key because the facility itself has an established water quality curriculum. As you see here in the photo, the director of the facility, Karen, on the right, and our head naturalist, Rick, on the left. This model has been placed in their museum. It's a 3-season diorama museum. And a lot of times the museums and the auditorium are used for kind of the introduction of the location. But basically, this is going to serve as a tremendous resource for the school kids that come through this program. As I mentioned, it's fortunate to be able to place it at EandO. It's kind of central in Quickney's region for the educational purpose of reaching as many students as possible. This project is in progress. Before I talk too far, we were able to obtain this model just as COVID was had started. And so the model was actually received approximately a month ago and set up. And if there is a positive to looking at the pandemic, it's the fact that we're able to train like the Dickens on it with the two staff, the two naturalists and the director there at EandO. And also comes in at a great time as they are utilizing a lot of the digital motifs now, a YouTube channel and their Facebook interactions with teachers to go out and reach an annual audience for this facility is about 12,000 people. I would say 8,000 to 10,000 are school children between K and 6. And obviously the model itself is what the draw will be to, fortunately placed at that location. And it'll help us achieve the goal. The whole premise of this grant was to get those volumes to actually take advantage of those volumes of students going through the facility, as it shares the same goals and that the Basin program does as well as all the partners of Quickney, including Kristen there at the LGA, ourselves here at Soil and Water, and several of the other partners in the local region. And again, not to sound like a broken record, I'm going through, Colleen shot me the bullets to stick to here, so I'm trying to hit all of them for you there, Colleen. But the deliverables are to hit no less than 1,500, roughly 1,500 in school students primarily in Warren and Washington and Essex counties, the counties of the partners. And having said that, we're doing this project through them and it's sponsored by that Up Yonder Farm, the education center, they actually have a tremendous network now already of communication with teachers. So utilizing that resource to get the word out about the model, that it exists, and hopefully as soon as schools start to allow themselves to move around, they'll be able to come in and utilize this model. Getting a little more to the sustenance of it, as Kristen with Weary Eye from the LGA is here in the meeting, with the HABs breakout on Lake George, and with a lot of the issues we have with invasive species, this model will actually help a considerable amount of students, children, if you will, between K and 6, who are at that pinnacle stage of learning, to actually put A and B together, to actually look at the land, see runoff, see human impact, and actually end up in beautiful bodies of water like Champlain and Lake George. I do have to include a quick caveat. Up Yonder Farm is a 72-acre parcel, fortunate enough to have a beautiful vista of the narrows of Lake George from the top of its hill, a pond at the bottom, a stream that passes through it. So this resource is a tremendous asset because it will put the mental aspects of the learning curve together for students, as they can not only utilize it here, as you may or may not know, you place your hand over the land, it shows rain, it shows it come down across the land. So when we mimic this model to look like Up Yonder, and we show it raining as it goes down to the pond of the facility and then down into Lake George, and much less the impacts to the larger watershed, it'll send the message home. So moving right along here, the shared results will be through communication and emails. Teachers usually get evaluations sent back to the facility day of, if not within the week. And we're just very fortunate. Definitely the facility Up Yonder is very thankful for Quickney's involvement to be able to chase this down, and Quickney, and on their behalf, is very fortunate to have the financial funding to produce this model for that facility.
Thanks, Dean. And can you just do a quick shout out explanation of Quickney for folks who may not know the organization?
Champlain Watershed Improvement Coalition of New York is comprised of several county agencies that utilize that are there to help protect the natural resources within those areas. I apologize, as I was coming in between two different things. I didn't have a tremendous amount of background with me for Quickney itself, but
no worries.
But we are well partnered. Speaking as a Warren County Soil and Water, we're well partnered with the other 4 or 5 districts under this umbrella, as well with private entities such as the LGA and other facilities. So
great. So we have 5 counties in New York that border Lake Champlain. So Quickney does a good job of pulling the resource folks together. So thank you for that. Any quick question for Dean? Some of you may have seen this exhibit at ECHO and also down at the Lake George Visitor Center as well, similar versions. So it's a great teaching tool. Okay, if not, let's go ahead. Patrick from Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, you're the wrap up.
All right. Love being the last one on. So I'll go quickly. My name is Pat Donay. I am the projects coordinator at Friends of Northern Lake Champlain. We're a watershed group that works primarily in Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Our educational program is entitled Wind, Waves, and Variables, Lessons About Lake Champlain Basin. And this was born out of work that we were doing with Alex Lenning in the St. Albans Museum. They put on classes entitled Lake Lessons, and they would invite schools in the area to meet down at either the St. Albans Town Park or the Georgia Town Park, and they would go over with partners, and they would discuss things for 3rd and 4th graders. So we wanted to bring these lessons to the schools. So we essentially came up with this curriculum with an educational partner, and we wanted to bring these classes to 4 schools in the area, predominantly Franklin County, Vermont, and like I said, Grand Isle County as well. And basically works out to 4 sessions throughout the entire school year, and then 2 field trips that kind of bookend what our lessons are about. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to go into some 5th and 6th grade classes at various schools. We had 3 schools lined up before COVID, and one almost there, and then COVID kind of put the kibosh on a lot of it. So we were looking at Franklin Central School in Franklin, Vermont, Sheldon Elementary School, Alberg Community Education Center, and possibly Swanton Elementary. So, and basically the 4 different sessions, we were going to focus on skills lessons, where we talk about the scientific inquiry and scientific principles. One session was going to be about societal lessons and learn the culture and the history around the basin. And then one was about the geology of the basin. And then another session was water lessons. And then the 2 field trips, one was going to be, or is going to be, Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuge to learn about wetlands and their importance in our basin. And then a field trip to Goodsell Ridge in Isle of Lamont to take in all the cool geology and stuff up there. So that's where we were going with this. And then because it's so hands-on, we couldn't really like transition this to a more virtual type of learning environment. And this being a pilot for us, we really wanted to just put a hold on it so that we could actually get into the classrooms and be very effective in delivering curriculum to kids in our area. So, sorry?
I said that's great.
So that's where we stand right now. We trying to go through my bullet points too that Colleen gave me.
Oh, that's okay. They're all optional.
Yeah, that's about it. So we're waiting, we're hoping things get better for the next school year. We found a pretty good partner in Kurt Valenta to help us get this out there to students. He specializes in outdoor educational stuff, so it dovetails nicely with what we want to do. So that's where we stand. Obviously, we couldn't have done this without the help of the Basin program, because it's expensive. Well, it's expensive to get kids to a place for like a field trip or a workshop, but then we're trying to make our money, we're trying to get it so that we could go there and have field trips as well and be very immersive in the educational impact.
That's great. Thank you.
That's what I have. Sorry, a little discombobulated, but
you're fine. For those of you who haven't been to the Northern Vermont section of Lake Champlain for a while, Friends of Northern Lake Champlain coordinated, I think we had 22 classrooms on site at St. Albans Bay. And a lot of the kids from the North Lake are hands-on hunter and fishers. So they're very active. And there were 6 different organizations or 8 different organizations that participated with those 22 classrooms. So this is a great next step, and I'm glad that you're expanding the classrooms that you'll reach.
And we've also been real quickly, we've been doing a lot of outreach to local schools to do stuff like stormwater management and stuff like that. So figure we keep rolling.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Any quick question, then we'll move on to the grant portion. Thanks very much, Patrick, for joining us.
Okay.
Anyone have a hand up? Not seeing any. Okay, Ryan moved around. I wasn't quite sure where he was. All right, that's great. So I really appreciate all the time and energy the large grant recipients put into sharing the results of their work or their upcoming work with the EandO committee and the rest of our partners who are here today. So thanks for taking that time. Let's switch for the next 20 minutes or so into the process that education and outreach will be using as we move forward on our grants and RFPs. So Ryan, I think you might have a chart that I sent along as well, colorful chart that we can post. So hopefully all of you have received the notification Recently, about a week ago, Kathy Jarvis, our office manager, sent it out, and it was for the current round of small and large education and outreach grants, as well as our organizational support grants. Those would have gone out, I think, about 10 days ago. They are due on December 21st. And you may say, why did you put it just before Christmas? Well, last year we decided to go the more lenient route and give a lot of people, well, give everybody until, I don't know, it was around January 6th or January 10th. Can't tell you how many calls I got that said, that was a really hard schedule. Maybe it should be before Christmas. So I don't think there's any winning answer there. We moved it back before the Christmas holidays. It's been a difficult year for people. We thought you might want to breathe a little bit. And you know, no matter what holiday or family gathering you're trying to celebrate or celebrate via Zoom, that you needed to be able to breathe at the end of the year this year. So December 21st is our deadline. Those are significant dollar amounts in there. Will end up being somewhere around 170,000 for both of those grant categories, for small and large, and then organizational support. Those are the smaller grants that go up to $4,000. We have a separate pool of money for those as well. We are scurrying our reviewers through the process this time so that we can get these decisions made by January 22nd. And the reason that we're doing it so quickly is because of this new large RFP that we're about to issue. We are doing this new RFP to make the education and outreach portion of the Basin program come more in line with what our technical and heritage portions of the program have been doing the last couple of years. So just to be clear, the grant money in yellow at the top of the screen is money that we already have in hand and that we will be awarding in this winter. And then the work plans will be due probably, I don't know, April or so. So it's money in hand and those projects can get underway. The turquoise section of this work plan, that money is not in hand yet. But what we're trying to do is to get in the position over the next 18 months where we're giving organizations more lead time to get the work plans done prior to the field seasons coming up. So that first top line, full proposals, will be sought for up to $50,000. And we're going to issue this request for proposal on or by November 18th. We've done a draft of it, but we wanted to hear some feedback from folks on this call and then let the Education and Outreach Committee digest that a little bit before we issued it. So we didn't want to issue it, hear some feedback, have to tweak it, and have to be back in touch with all of you. So it'll be issued on November 18th. The full proposals will be due on February 1st. So you will be notified of the yellow grants on January 22nd. If you weren't successful for a large grant in that pool, you can then turn it around for that February 1st deadline. So that's why we did this staggered approach. So you can possibly get a second chance at getting a larger grant. And that would be for the second proposal. Those applicants will be notified of the funding decisions in May of 2021. The new detailed work plan will be due in August, and I can feel some of you cringing because it's prime field season. But what that will allow is that for October, which would begin our fiscal year, and by then the money will be in hand, then those projects are ready to hit the ground. Whether you start them in October, November, December, or January, you know, sometime in that next 6 months time frame, at least your planning piece of that will all be done. And for those of you who have an early field season, that legwork will be done instead of backing you up till May or June. And then what we anticipate is that in 2021, Next, excuse me, next November, we will be issuing small and large grants again and organizational support. And the same for when they would be due is in December. And then that second round of proposals that we're issuing next week would be scheduled for November 2021. So we wanted to get this calendar listing of grants and proposals out to you now so you could use it for planning purposes. And Ryan, if you could just scroll down so we could see that last box, please. There we go. So the Basin Program Steering Committee will be trying something different this year. We'll be hosting an event in June of 2021. And you can see that little yellow area that's been asterisked. There may be a chance during this process that the steering committee and the Education and Outreach Committee sort of merge their thoughts on this and say that the new large RFP, which will be due in November 2021, may be merged with a large EandO grant. So we might merge those two into one larger pool of money. We'll see how that goes. So that's why I'm telling you it will be like an 18-month process. We're very clear on what the next 11 months will be. And we'll let you know on that possible merger of those two pools of money for next November. So is that as clear as mud for everyone? Think of it as the guaranteed money is still there in the yellow, and that will go forward as we have in the past. And then the turquoise money is an earlier pot of money for large grants that people may apply for. So that's what we're trying to do, get people to be, I'm sure for all of your organizations, you'd rather know sooner rather than later what your projects are 6 to 12 months out. That's what I'm guessing. So that's why we're trying to do this on a similar pattern to the technical programs. Does anyone, so this part's totally open to Q&A. So
Colleen, there is a question in the chat about getting feedback on those local grants.
excellent. Well, what's it say here? Whoops, mine not down at the bottom. From Gianna, with yellow funding decisions released January 22nd. Can we include more feedback than usual so applicants who choose to reapply have some time to edit? Well, I will tell you, Gianna, that I expect to be in the office for some pretty long days right then to help answer questions too. I'll try to put more detailed feedback into that process. As many of you know, our letters for yay and nay are often pretty bare bones. And then people who have not received a grant will call for follow-up. So that's an excellent point. And I have it on my radar now, Gianna. Thank you. It's a great point. Any others?
Colleen, I have a question.
Sure.
I guess my question, just that, are there different priorities between the large EandO grants versus this second proposal?
Right. So that's a great question, Kristen. And there are two things we should talk about there. One is that both the technical proposals in our program and the cultural heritage proposals have a process of identifying themes for some of their, or priorities for those grant proposals. The Education and Outreach Committee during this transition year has chosen not to have themes. So the new proposal will be open across the board for anything that pertains to informed and involved public. That's a chapter within Opportunities for Action, our management plan. If you take a look at that, that's even a broader application than our large grants, because our large grants currently as written in this yellow pool have to have a water quality emphasis of some type built in. So that turquoise category currently does not. In a future year, you might see them ask that a certain theme or priority issue be attached to some of that funding. So does that help?
Yes, thank you, Colleen.
Okay, and let's see. I think, whoops, did I miss Kate's up there, Ryan? I guess I can scroll back up there. So Kate, will the new proposals be for any amount up to $50,000? Great question, Kate. We would like them to be for 15,000 or larger. So we'd like the smaller grants to stay in that small grant category. Yeah, we don't fund between 10 and 15. Well, you're right. We don't. And it was really to try to clarify that we are really looking for larger grants. I would say if you want to make it, that's good feedback for the committee. If it's over 10,000, it should go into that larger grant category. We just didn't want a bunch coming in right at 10 and 12,000 if we could help it. If you have a large idea, let's have a larger budget. I should also mention the grants that you heard about today, those are summarized in our annual report that our Elizabeth Lee. We have two Elizabeth Lees in this group. Elizabeth Lee North is our Elizabeth Lee, and Elizabeth Lee South is the Maritime Museums. Elizabeth Lee North compiles the annual report for us every year. That's available online, and we also have a grants database that's online. So you can see a write-up about any of the grants that were discussed today. Quite a few of them come in the mid-20s. A couple of them are higher. We had a couple of requests for 50 grand. I think the largest one funded was 45. It was Lori's stormwater project the first year, so it was cut back a little bit. But good question, Kate. And then if we decide to apply for a large grant, shall we apply for one that is already released or for the one that will be released on November 18th? I would recommend you apply for the one that's just been released in the yellow category. And then if it's not funded, you can be early in the planning process and apply for it for next year. So through the one that will be issued on November 18th, but it's really up to you. And Hilary's asking, what are the restrictions about applying for more than one grant? Eric, are you still on the line? Is Eric still in this pool, Ryan, or did he get off for another meeting?
I don't know. I think we would have heard from him by now if he's still on. Oh, there he is.
Jeez, give me a second to unmute myself. Come on.
For those of you who don't know Eric, Eric is the director of the Lake Champlain Basin program. And Eric, I messed up because I forgot to ask you that on Saturday. So
that's fine. I was anticipating that one. Yes, typically in these new grant programs that we're building, organizations are eligible to submit more than one proposal per grant opportunity. So that is one major difference.
That would be for the teal colored ones. And it's really for the Basin program to maximize the number of ideas that are out there to see which ones might be stronger. From your perspective, Hilary, you may only choose to do one because you don't want the energy to go into two, but we will accept multiple proposals. Thank you, Eric, for clarifying.
No problem.
Let's see. Chris. So, Chris Stepanek from Lake Champlain Sea Grant wondered if there really is any input you'd like to offer on priority themes in the future. Do you have a sense for if they should all be specific to water quality? This is your opportunity to weigh in and give the Education and Outreach Committee some feedback. You can wave your hand if Ryan can't see you, maybe, if you'd like to offer some feedback, or you can also put it right in the chat. Okay, all right. Lori, did you have a thought there? No? Okay. All right, no? Okay, so Chris, we're not sure on that. The jury's out. But there is, You can always feel free to give us a call or send us a message, or even pop into an Education Outreach Committee meeting at some point if you'd like to offer feedback. I think, Buzz, that would be welcome. Right? Okay. All right. Great. And then Ryan put up the link for the grants database, and the annual report link is in the chat box as well. I'm seeing that I might have a message. Okay, great. Is it important for people to get involved in all sorts of outside activities, or to get them interested in conservation and involved at the local level? Kate, are you able to come on the audio to clarify that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, it wasn't meant to be a question. It was just my opinion on your earlier question about holding, just having sort of priorities be water quality versus including other things. And I think it's important to include other things, because not everyone is going to be super interested in water quality, but if you can educate them, get them outside doing whatever it is, then that may help help folks get involved at the local level and be more interested in conservation at the larger scale too.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Corey Miller's agreeing with you, Kate. And for education outreach issues around flood resilience, headwater protection, etc. So thank you very much, everyone. Again, you should feel free to reach out to us at any point. This was a first time effort for us, and I thank the Education Outreach Committee for saying, hey, let's get other people's opinions in here now rather than later. You are the boots on the ground portion of the Basin program. We're pretty good at giving out money, and you're very good at getting people involved at the local level. So you should know that Watershed group funding and local, district funding and other NGO funding consistently has been the top priority from the Education and Outreach Committee. So we all get what you're doing. We know that if someday the Basin program goes away, the stronger you are, the better off the watershed will be. So thank you again for all your work. That's all I have. So the Education and Outreach Committee, could you stay on a little bit to digest? And everybody else, I hope you have a magnificent day. And even though it's gray, and we're going to go back to the 30s tomorrow, at least it's not raining here on the shores of Grand Isle. So thanks everyone for your effort.